who we are. So Flowmon, I will start from the Flowmon side. Flowmon has been a multinational company since 2009. Previously, it was a startup that started from the Czech Republic. And from 2009 until late 2020, the company was pretty successful in growing. We made it to, well, all continents minus Antarctica. They got to 42 countries, established an impressive set of reference cases. And at the end of 2020, we joined forces with another multinational company. That's called Kemp Technologies. And joining forces came in the form of Kemp acquiring the entirety of Flowmon networks. And so we carried on as with our portfolio as Kemp Flowmon. And well, it's a fresh announcement that Kemp Flowmon was acquired by Progress. So in a very short time, the Flowmon portfolio was changing hands. Okay, that's our little history. And today we're trying to talk to you about possible business development. I trust we are talking to an audience coming from the Adriatics and Romania. And we do know that this area has some history with LoadMaster. Well, in a way, it's a working relation. So we see some numbers being made with that side of the portfolio. And we certainly want to talk about the Flowmon side of things, because we believe that there's pretty good business to be made with that side as well. Just to give you some examples, the whole Flowmon business started from the Czech Republic, and now it's reliably more than 5 million euros in that small country only. The next one Flowmon started in was Slovakia. They've been doing it for 7+ years. They reliably make more than 2 million. We started our business a little bit more than 3 years in my country, Hungary, and now we're making a reliable 500,000. So we see the potential in the Adriatics region and in Romania as well. And I will try to explain how it may be a little bit different from other visibility vendors today. However, one good reason to talk to us about business development would be that not only is our company, was our country born in Europe, we do maintain a very strong international presence in the Central Eastern Europe. If you only look at the number of presets, we have more than 10 people available in this region, and that's not counting support, who on this side of the portfolio are located in the same time zone. So it does make quite some sense to talk to us, hopefully. But let's get to the portfolio now. I will talk about what is it that we sell. So what's our flavor of visibility? What is it our customers love about that? I will talk shortly about architecture. Obviously, this is not a pre-sale session. I will not overload anyone with technology, but however, I will mention how that really looks like. We'll talk about next steps and touch a little bit on the LoadMaster product lines. And at the end, we'll discuss a little bit the competition, and I promise that I will keep it reasonable and respectful. So visibility, our flavor. When it comes to defining what we do for the purpose of visibility, I like to say that we do two things. The first one is that we have an ability to either ingest or generate data on who's talking to whom, in what time to distribution, or over what applications, and that comes in the form of logs. So we can generate some sort of logs about who's talking to whom, and we can get this information out of existing network infrastructure as well. For the more technical oriented, this will come in the form of NetFlow, JFlow, SFlow, IPFix, these kinds of telemetry data. The second thing that we need to do is give some sort of analytics to make use of these logs. Otherwise, just as location data on your smartphones, if you don't have an application to make use of it, then it's useless. As soon as you start opening, I don't know, Google Maps, then you have a navigation application. Pair it with your, I don't know, smartwatch, and you have an exercise support tool. Same data, different application. So what is it that we do for IT organizations? What is Flowmon? First of all, I do like to explain that in a typical IT environment, regardless of which role we are talking to, we'll give something that is very important to these roles. Some examples: architects who are designing infrastructures. For those people who then we can give the knowledge how these applications are actually used. So did we plan for 100 users? How many are there in reality? Is there any seasonality, daily, weekly, monthly? We did plan, okay, 100 users, 200 users. We planned these amounts of users to have this amount of transactions on the front ends and the back ends. How much of that is true? And do we have subsystems that influence each other? Think about backups influencing application response times. But we can look at people who operate something, typically systems engineers, as we like to call them. The ability to talk about factual data and talk about the factual data historically, weeks, even months in the past, so often makes the number one go-to troubleshooting, makes Flowmon the number one go-to troubleshooting tool for these people. Because we can always ask the questions. Did this piece of communication happen or did it not happen? Did we send the request and did we get the response? Did we get that in time? And were these sequences erroneous or did they complete successfully? When we're talking about roles, people who start approaching a management position, either because they're team leaders or security officers or IT officers themselves, for them, we do give the bird's eye views, the satellite views of what we're doing. How are throughput? So how do our throughputs look like? What do we do in the data center? What's with the basic services? Are they accessible? Do they work? And what's with the key applications? Are those used? User experience, is it good? Do we see outliers who are having bad experiences? And by the way, who wins the daily Facebook championship? All these questions can serve these people. That's one thing. So the overviews. And second, we have this built-in reporting capabilities, and that's obviously automated reporting always helps. That's one thing, but these people sometimes need to talk about budgeting as well. And when you can do this along facts, then it's again very helpful. When we talk to people being busy with security, first of all, they really do tend to love our security analytics engine. We have a specific module that targets just that, the learning type security analytics. We'll get to that later. But they also like to have this availability of factual data. Did a particular set of communication happen or not happen? When did it start? Has it been going on in the past 2 weeks or has it not? And as a final example, I would like to touch on applications teams, since we have the ability to talk round trip times, server response times, transactions. You'll see later we have a module we like to call APM. The name doesn't really matter, but the ability that we are able to analyze front-end transactions and the continuation of them on the SQL backends. It makes us a valuable tool that applications teams make use of. And it's very typical in my practice that we do development workshops with actual developers, helping them fine-tune their application. So, okay, that was number one. Doesn't matter how many people, how many roles we face in an IT environment, we give them something that is useful in their number one line of work. And there's a second thing as well. We do all of these on a single pane of glass. All this factual data being available at the same time in a single application often results in the ability that we can eliminate from these people's lives what they hate the most about their jobs. 2 examples. An application sneezes at any point in time, bad user experience happens, and it suddenly becomes a networking ticket. And now, I don't know, systems engineering are troubleshooting their networks without even having a clue. If the problem is in the network, in the infrastructure, I mean server storage infrastructure, is it in the application? Is it in the code? And that's, you can imagine, it's the same problems with applications teams as well. Some application doesn't break, they often have no clue if it's the code they need to look at, or is it just some misconfiguration on some share that they were supposed to be able to log to. So that would be the second thing. And these two things often bring all these people to sit down on the same side at the same table and solve problems together along facts. And this is the third layer. When high management realizes, okay, now this magical Flowmon thingy, if that's needed for my people to suddenly start working together instead of playing the hot potato game, and then giving me factual data, what needs to be done, and I see cooperation, okay, that's something. So often we get the final yes from higher management because we can sing on that level. We can be the platform where all these people meet and start working together along facts. Okay. Enough of preaching. Let's take a look at how a Flowmon landscape typically looks like. Very typically, we have one center of a Flowmon landscape, and that center is what we call the Flowmon collector. Its job is to collect all the technical logs that we either get from the infrastructure or generate with our probes. That's their number one job. The number two job, equally important, is that they contain our analytics landscape. And they contain that in an integrated form, meaning you always have one collector. And these particular types of analytics that we do, so security analytics, one license, SQL analytics, another license, the ability to record traffic, another license. But you don't have to manually integrate anything. It's just the license keys that enable or disable a particular functionality. Okay, and let's take a look at what these modules do, mainly because of the acronyms present. So if we look at the NetApp's side of the world, network operations, the first thing that's all Flowmon landscapes will contain is the so-called NPMD. That's network performance monitoring and diagnostics. That's how analysts like Forrester and Gartner are calling these kinds of products. They're the place where we make sense of the data we collect. I mean, we visualize it, we draw the application's end farm, how that looks like. We can ask questions. Who's doing that? Who's doing that? Who are the top talkers? Things like that. That's where reporting happens. So first things first, we make it visible. We can work with our data. The second logical thing comes in the security field, security operations. And that's what we call anomaly detection system. If we look on a market, how analysts like to call these kinds of products, we'll see that the nomenclature did change over time. 10 years ago, this kind of stuff was called NBA, Network Behavioral Analytics. Then it was called NTA, Network Traffic Analysis. Now, today, it's called NDR, Network Detection and Response. But in essence, nothing has changed. So we take the ability to draw the application's lens farm, and we apply the next logical step. We learn how that behaves normally. And when we see deviations from that, then we can alert our owners, users, something is going on. So that's our ADS. Now let's get back to the NetApp's world, APM. Again, analysts always call these kinds of products APM, application performance monitoring. We do a network-based APM, so we don't install agents, we don't install anything, we just do that from network traffic. And we can work with web-based frontends, and we can work with SQL backends. And we analyze the transactions, and basically that's it. The final module that we'll talk in detail about today is the packet investigator. That's not something the market likes to call Flowmon packet investigator. It's the ability to record traffic and do protocol analysis in them. More on that later. For now, just remember that we also have the ability to record raw traffic. So it's not just the logs that we can create. We have the ability to record traffic in its entirety as well. About DDoS Defender, we do have this kind of module that's more or less targeted at ISPs, looking to protect their users from distributed denial of service attacks, especially the volumetric type. This isn't something that we're going to do a detailed explanation on today. Okay, so let's start with the NPMD, Network Monitoring Performance and Diagnostics part. As we mentioned, this is where we create the end farm of our applications landscape. And we see that there's two characteristic uses of this module. The first one is creating the overviews. So we create beautiful dashboards about our throughputs, our basic services, our key applications, our timings, so round trip time, server response time, delays, jitter, cloud applications. We have built-in facilities to catch productive ones like Google Cloud components, Google Suite, Google Office Suite, Office 365, and well, we can talk about unproductive, well, not that productive ones. So Facebook, Netflix, Google, Apple TV, TikTok, Spotify, you name it, any software as a service, native cloud application happens over your network, we can talk about that. We can put it on a dashboard, and it doesn't need to all just, it's not about just shiny and pretty. When we are measuring these types of traffic, we're also collecting average and maximal server response times, round trip times, retransmissions, jitter, and that sometimes is really powerful in itself. But that is one thing. Please note that when we are talking about dashboarding, the same stuff with the same steps can be automated in PDF reporting. So we can spam our colleagues or ourselves with regular daily, weekly, monthly reports, be it availability reports, security reports, application availability, or user experience report. We can create all of that. So that's characteristic use number one. Number two would be the ability to work with the data. That is something that typically the more technically inclined people do, who need to operate something, systems engineers. But they will gain the capabilities to answer seemingly impossible questions. Is it possible? So who were the ones who used an expired certificate 2 weeks ago? Is it possible that some entities are using deprecated encryption methods? Was it possible that because we had a stray backup job, our average server response time is spiking now every morning at 8 o'clock? That's what you see on the screen now on this little chart. We can start answering the seemingly impossible questions as well. So that's so much about NPMD. Let's carry on with anomaly detection system. So we saw that, okay, we get the flow data, we either generate it or we pull it out from existing network equipment. We collect them, we store them for long term, typically weeks or months even. And anomaly detection is an additional layer of processing. We take, okay, we do take inputs and we do give our users things that honestly we pre-programmed use cases. We also give the ability for machine learning. So if we want to, throw around the words AI a lot, then this would be the place to do that. And yes, a lot of hits do come out of that, and there we typically engage in with security projects that need a kind of security orchestration approach. And this part of our application landscape is where we do that. So automation and integration are very strong capabilities with ADS. One very typical, and I believe that you will see this on the market already. One very typical use of any NDA or NDR or NTA product is that it's used to feed SIEM systems. With the recent generation of SOCs, security operations centers, it became apparent that SIEMs can't do everything by themselves. The kind of product that we sell, an NTA, is able to feed a SIEM with super condensed and rich information. So if you see a SIEM project, think about adding ADS on top. If we look at interop or integration capabilities, one of the integration capabilities is that we can interoperate with NGFW products, firewalls. With FortiGate firewalls and checkpoints, we have an integration. So if you see something, really unwanted, really nasty going on inside our network, we can get those firewalls to block the activity on the border of the network. And one of the other integration capabilities would be the ability to trigger recording. When we see something suspicious going on in the network, we can get our systems to automatically record that activity, just in case we'll need it for proof as proof, or we'll want to hand that information to our security experts for forensics and threat hunting purposes. Okay, that's so much about ADS. Let's talk about APM, application performance monitoring. We don't do agents. We look at the traffic that's going on around the network, and we'll start analyzing web front-end transactions and SQL backend transactions. We'll establish the typical ones with typical response times in their respective categories, and we'll count errors, and we'll be able to individually look at transactions, meaning that we're gaining the ability to drill down to the SQL query level. And that's, yes, this is the ability that typically enables us to conduct workshops with people coming from development. Okay, let's carry on with the final one that we intend to explain. That's called the Flowmon Packet Investigator. This is the module that enables us to record real traffic as it comes and do protocol analysis on that. So for recording, you may have two kinds of motivation. One is the security one. That's what we already discussed. ADS sees something nasty and you want to record it. It's all automated, very nice. The second automation, or the second, sorry, the second motivation that you may have for full packet recording is that because we have an interoperability problem. Why am I not getting an IP address? Why can I not find address X, Y, or Z? Why can I not upload? Why can I not download something? Why is the voice quality bad? All these things. And it happens, and these problems happen along sequential protocols with very well-known sequences. And by writing a protocol analytics tool, we can make the troubleshooting process so much faster. Imagine someone is not able to send an email, and then, okay, you do a targeted recording, bring up the traffic between the mail server and the user, and you let the robots take a look at it, and then it will see, okay, TCP session established, we went on to the mail server, we are very happy, we greeted each other, we'll send an email, very nice, it's going to be encrypted, and now it suddenly stops. Because the SSL handshake doesn't go through. Why? We set that on the server, we're only accepting TLS 1.2 or 1.3, and the client is trying to force us to use 1.1. We have a mismatch error. Please harmonize the settings on the client and server. If the robot does it, it takes mere seconds. If we try to do this manually, well, Wireshark is our friend, we can always do this. But if we start our investigation in the wrong direction, we may spend half a day just with this simple problem. And that's what we kind of try to automate and make really fast for any people who work in operations. So what's Flowmon in one extended line? So let's sum up what we heard so far. Okay, with Flowmon, I like to use the term, we're able to see everything too. So if it's factual data, you get that. If it's reporting, you get that. If you want to see your patterns, maybe on beautiful dashboards, you do get that. And then on top, we have the ability to add security analytics and application experience or user experience analytics. And if that wouldn't be enough, we add the ability to selectively record traffic and run protocol analytics on it. That's pretty much of what we do on the Flowmon side of the portfolio. But we're finding that for most of the potential customers that we talk to, at least two of these topics are quite likely to resonate at some level. The only difficulty is that contrary to, I don't know, firewalling projects or networking projects, storage projects, visibility projects, especially Flowmon type visibility projects, just don't happen out of nowhere. So we typically have to, well, not just talk about it, but show it. And we are finding that the most effective selling tool that at our disposal is doing proof of concepts and demos. I believe that's different from your usual networking business. Okay, and while we're at it, let's talk about the Flowmon food chain, because I believe that's a very important lesson to be learned here. If we look at the life cycle of, well, of basically any deal, but we'll focus on our ones. How do we generate Flowmon leads? Obviously, there's the answer. We employ salespeople, account managers, and through their contacts will give us leads, and we'll work on that, and they generate the leads. Great. We're finding that, at least in my country, that serves for about 40% of the leads that we get. Another 20 or so % of the leads, give or take. I don't have an exact measure on this. It's just a gut feeling. Our 20% of the leads that we generate are generated by our Flowmon partners who operate something. Their technical people identify the repeating, mysterious errors, user experience problems, complications in company culture, responsibility not having takers and things like that. So that often comes from tech people. And the third one, the third source where we get leads from is the marketing type activities. I like to call it carpet bombing. So we're not targeting one specific customer. We do a webinar where we explain all these things, and we follow up after the event, and some of the people will be interested. I'm finding that after 2020, this source has become quite important, and it only works if it happens in local language. So please remember that 30 to 40% of the leads are typically made by, but at least in my country, are made in webinars that partners are hosting. They're inviting their customers. They listen to interesting topics, and when we follow them up, it turns out that they would be interested to talk more about Flowmon. For the pre-sales phase, I will not go into too much detail here. Suffice to say that the most effective pre-sales tool is the proof of concept / demo. Since we do have something like an 80% plus conversion rate, so those customers who do agree to a proof of concept with us, in at least 4 cases out of 5 would be interested in buying from us. Then comes the hard part. Being actually able to buy from us. And we all live in Eastern Europe, so budget constraints, yes. Public tendering in more of the cases, yes. So even if everyone in the IT infrastructure is our friend, even in those cases, our patience is somewhat tried. You probably know just as well as I do that in public sector, sometimes it takes 1 year, even 2 years to get through what we want. But since we're looking at 100K plus deals, it's probably what this as well. I would like to touch on one thing. Okay, there's the obvious things on a post-sales phase. Okay, people will need to be trained to deliver the images and screw in the hardware and racks, and turn on the lights. Yes, we can provide help with onboarding customers. But there's a wonderful thing that happens to the more established Flowmon customers. And since it's business development that we're talking about, I believe it's worth to spend another 2 minutes on this. In my country, even our end customers are requesting our partners to not only provide the Flowmon images, licenses, and initial education. They will want the Flowmon partner to take this, as you have seen before, take this quite complicated analytics toolset and consult the partner regularly. Talk to them about them. What's going on in their operations? What's going on with their user experience? Where is their security headed at? And I would like to remind you that getting into this position is what they like to call in sales cookbooks the trusted advisor. The customer is willing to pay money for your consultants to talk to the customer, not only about the next Flowmon sale. Talk about the next steps in security, next steps in infrastructure, next steps in application development, and things like that. So if you ask our partners why they decided to go with us and not some other vendor, one of the strongest arguments will be that, okay, Flowmon offers the breadth from NPND through security, through applications. They can touch pretty much everything. And that's very strong. Okay, if you look at this side of portfolio, what is it that you will need? Well, what this market will need, and what is it that we can help you with, and what is it that we cannot help you that much with? First of all, any market will sooner or later need leads. So we need to start somewhere. And this is something that, well, ALEF will certainly try to help you guys with, but this is something that you will need to understand, that we as Flowmon don't have the ability to, well, grant you leads on a silver plate. That's not something we can do. However, what we can do for you is we can take you seriously. We can train you and your people. We can hold your hands when you're doing your first, and subsequent demos, and we can hold your hands when you do your first implementations. We're not hiding the fact that sooner or later, your people will need to have the expertise, because, well, according to my experience, a customer in Eastern Europe is best spoken to in their own native language, and let's leave it at that. Okay. And you will certainly need to get, well, our know-how that's established, how to do the successful demos, and how to become successful consultants. Luckily, we do have all of this available, and we are ready to teach your people. All you need to do is come to us, start the journey with us, and take this in a way seriously. And now for something completely different, in a sense that I would like to talk a few minutes about the LoadMaster side of the portfolio. So Flowmon business, a little bit close now. Load balancing, what's that? So LoadMasters are load balancers. And what LoadMasters can typically do, or what are the cliches of the LoadMaster business, the usuals, is obviously where load balancers come from, is the need to establish scalability. So when one server is probably not enough to serve all the customers that are coming in, then a logical piece of equipment that will add to our infrastructure is a load balancer that is, located between customers and servers, and they will decide which servers the particular customers will use. Easy. That's how load balancers were born in the first place. And then adding this functionality did come with a need to add, well, advanced logic on that. So we can now measure actual server response times, and we can take into account different capabilities. And then comes the ability to take a look at geographical locations. So many of our customers are looking to establish geo-redundancy, and they like to use our load balancers to do that. And then comes the question of improving availability. If you already have an intelligence between your users and your servers, you may just well use this intelligent piece of networking to determine whether a particular server is ready to serve customers. And by doing that, selectively, they pretty much became the tool to make sure that we avoid downtimes by automatically checking up on services and directing users as need to be, maybe within the data center, and as we touched on it already, maybe redirecting users to another data center. And then, as using these devices became a standard, a few logical steps were added along the way. The first logical step is what we call SSL offloading, and what was actually sitting all behind of that is to decrypt the traffic that's coming from the users, and according to our choices, encrypt it again on the backend side. If we're talking about really high volumes of traffic, hundreds of thousands of transactions per minute, most providers will decide not to decrypt on a backend. Sometimes they do. It's our choice. So the ability to open encrypted channels often happens at the load balancer level. And why we're doing that, maybe because we want to spare our servers from the burden of decryption, or maybe it's because we want to add different things. We may want to pre-authenticate our users before they get the chance to touch our servers. Or we may want to implement multi-factor authentication. You know the thing, so it's not only a username and password that you need, but someone sends you a text message with a PIN code, or you start to use Microsoft or Google, RSA, or any sort of authenticator. That's multi-factor authentication. Load balancers are a very typical step to a very typical place in a network where you may want to implement multi-factor authentication. And when we're talking about not just one, but multiple applications, we typically want strong authentication, maybe multi-factor, but we also want single sign-on. So if we provide services like web and mail and web and mail and file services, for example, we may not want our users to do their authentication for all those services individually. If they come in and authenticate to be able to access one service, then we'll know that the user has already successfully authenticated, and then we can let them use the other applications as well. That's what we call single sign-on. Okay, let's carry on a little bit with the very popular use case, web application firewall. When we're talking about modern times, we'll see that more and more services are using web services. And I don't like that this kind of, well, security module is called a web application firewall, because it's just not that. Firewalls are traditionally packet filters, and they work with IP addresses and ports, maybe signatures. But what you want to have is a proxy that is able to actually analyze the web traffic that's going through it. That's what we grant. That's hopefully and luckily the market already knows what web application firewalls are good for. And it's worth to know that our load balancer has the same engine that everyone has, and we have this this pattern matching type of modern engine in that. Okay, what else? So these are the cliches of load balancing. So this is something that every load balancer could or should do, and this is not different with ours. What our customers love about the Kemp LoadMasters, well, obviously it's something that that is sellable, and not just to a handful of companies. I did tell you about these cliches of load balancing, because in my practice, well, it turns out that as soon as we talk to a potential customer about the capabilities a LoadMaster typically has, they will find one or two use cases that they would be interested in. And well, contrary to the Flowmon business, we're finding that the LoadMaster business is a relatively fast and transactional business. One of the key differentiators, again, are support and licensing flexibility. I would say that licensing flexibility is something that makes LoadMaster so easy to tailor to any user needs or, well, capabilities. Okay, we wanted to talk a little bit less about LoadMasters, and I think we managed to do that. I would, however, like to touch on maybe two key differentiators that two or three that other load balancer vendors are not doing. First of all, a number one priority with the Kemp LoadMasters is ease of use, simplicity, and we're taking it seriously in a sense that there's 80+ use cases where the installation is templated. Think about, do you want to load balance an exchange? Okay, download this little template. It's online, it's free. And all the components, how you do the health checking, all the things that that can become complicated with any ADC. They are already pre-configured for Exchange 2019. All you do is enter the IP addresses where each component will reside, and you're done. You can enable load balancing with a Kemp LoadMaster, and I'm not kidding. For an Exchange landscape, you can do that in maybe 30 minutes. That's one differentiator. Second one, load balancers typically don't help visibility. It's completely unique in the LoadMasters that as soon as we start using them, they are able to generate the same statistics that our Flowmon devices do. So we're not. So we're talking about the same high quality unsampled data that can be used to talk about round trip times and server response times. A Kemp LoadMaster can feed a Flowmon collector with the most valuable statistics that we are able to get. Super important and is a differentiator. And okay, maybe enough of these because we only have a few minutes left. And I would really want to talk a little bit about the competition, and I promise I will do it in a very respectful way. So we do see some competition in all the surrounding countries, and I would like to talk about the vendors that are only working with raw traffic, meaning they need their own probes or sensors or packet switches. And one thing about these vendors is that if you look at a customer who has maybe 1 to 2 central sites and then 10 branch offices, a project with these vendors will become super expensive. That is one. Second, some of these vendors like to specialize a lot. So if you look at Vector or Darktrace, they do one use case. They do it quite well, but they do only one use case. They do only the security, or with NetScout, pretty much almost only the NetOps, the NPMD part. And that's the second differentiator. And the third one, if you only do deep packet analysis, you will never be able to talk history. You'll never be able to talk about the past month, because even a mid-sized company will shove 100 terabytes through them. There's not the storage in the world where you could store all that. And so I believe that's one box where we differ. Another differentiator, another valid comparison would be comparing us to maybe the simpler vendors who come from the element management side of the world. Think about SolarWinds, maybe Plixa, who typically only do NetFlow. If you only do that, you need to know that NetFlow in itself is a little bit poor. You will never be able to talk round trip times or server response times if you only do NetFlow. You will never be able to record anything if you only do NetFlow. You'll never be able to do application performance monitoring. So you'll never be able to drill down to the SQL query level if you only do NetFlow. As I said, the fact that we do flow generation, when that makes sense, but we apply the selective recording capability, is a differentiator in most cases. When we sometimes we do get asked the question, how do you compare against F5? Honestly, the first answer would be, we're not racing on the same track. okay, that's common. So if we are talking about the ADC, the load balancing usuals, then okay, we do all of that. Okay, if someone only needs to do that, then probably financially that it will be a better bet to go with us, honestly. But if you want to take a look at cases the other one is not really doing, then I would say one of the differentiators would be that we are able to generate IPFix that we do with our Flowmon probes, that we're providing the templates for fast installation for quite some applications, and the flexibility that we have with the licensing is something that almost none of our competitors have. All these will typically result in us being able to talk to customers where a big red offering would be just science fiction from a budgetary perspective. Okay, interop. I would like to touch on, because sometimes we're asked the question, especially in the Flowmon side, how do you compare with a Q-Rate RCM? How do you compare to Splunk? It's often, guys, we're not competing with those, we're complementing. If you're looking at the security projects, it's very typical to have our products look at traffic, do the security analytics, NTA, and then interoperate with some log management system like Splunk or RSA SIEM, FortiSIEM, QRadar, all very nice interop possibilities. Packet brokers. Packet brokers are typically very good to aggregate traffic to a select few points of the networks. And if that happens, the next logical step is to apply one of our probes to that point of the network, and then have all this beautiful analytics that we do. I think our time has passed and we didn't even really answer questions. So I will stop screen sharing now. By the way, I believe that we're almost at the end. Just to let you know what's coming next. So 2 more webinars are coming. So we'll take a little more deep look in the products themselves. So there's going to be one webinar for the Flowmon side and one webinar for the LoadMaster side. We'll discuss the partner programs. We'll give some information for pre-sales, how to get started. And with you, dear participants, ALEF guys will certainly follow up with you and ask how much you would be interested in becoming our partner. Okay, that's for me now. Do we have outstanding questions? I will look. Okay,
actually, there are no questions.
No questions so far.
Guys, don't be shy. And if you have any question, just ask.
Okay.